And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson. Tuesday night, the fresh batch of rankings are out from the chefs in that playoff selection committee kitchen. There has been no change at the top five: Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Florida down just one spot after losing as a 24-point favorite at home against an LSU team with a sub-500 record. Cincinnati dropped in a week when it didn't play, while Iowa State went up in a week when it didn't play. Coastal Carolina checks in at number 12. USC only from 15 to 13. There's two sort of conversations here. There's one that sort of feels like, all right, listen, we know that we're going to pretty much be facing an Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State college football playoff. Just sort of feels like that. But doesn't the selection committee deserve to be held accountable for their actions right now?
What do you mean by held accountable?
Well,
should they be arrested or
no? But
yes, arrest them, lock them up, lock them. Yes, no. I hear what you're saying, like held accountable. Cause I did, I've noticed some more people that aren't seen as a little bit more of a loose cannon the way I am, where I'm just shooting from the hip all the time, but like more respected voices that are starting to say, wait a second, does this make a whole lot of sense? And it doesn't. And you're starting to see, and I've been screaming this, pounding the table for the past 6 years. I've tried to make the case. I did it with UCF. This year at Cincinnati. And now I'm fully on board with Fornelli, who has said they don't have any chance. I thought they could maybe shake things up. It's a rigged system for the traditional powers, the blue bloods, if you will. And no one can ever crash the party until we change the rules.
The grift is real, gentlemen. I've been trying to tell you.
All right, so the committee's going to look at you with a straight face and say, well, Florida beat Georgia, and we're going to respect that head-to-head result, and that's what's going to put a very high floor for Georgia. I think that if Iowa State's one spot ahead, I think if Indiana and Florida played, they might score 111 points between the two of them, but I think Indiana could win that game. Like, I just think that there's a little bit of a log jam right there where it feels like the Bulldogs, the committee's starting to come around on them. They're not going to move them regardless of how they perform as long as they continue to win. And they're just not going to drop Florida below Georgia. And the reason I mentioned this is that this is going to be hurting Indiana's chance of getting in the New Year's Six. This is going to be hurting chances of other teams who are not part of this traditional power, who are having the best seasons that they've had in decades. They're not going to be able to go to, whether it's the Cotton Bowl, whether it's the Fiesta Bowl, whether it's the Orange Bowl. Those opportunities are not going to be there because of this log jam that they've got right there with Texas A&M, Florida, and Georgia.
Correct. And it sucks for them. And if we want to hold them accountable, we can. It's just, in my eye, they're not doing anything differently this year than they've done in any of the previous 6. Every single week of every single ranking for the last however many years, they've been asked questions. Well, why is this team here? And why is not this one? And why this one? And they just give you boilerplate answer to, they bend whatever the hell they want to say with using any statistic they want to say or any excuse they want to say to explain why one is there. And then 2 questions later, they will say the exact opposite about another team. Like the thing today is Cincinnati's dropped because it hasn't played since November 21st. Meanwhile, Ohio State has played once since November 21st, and they didn't even consider dropping Ohio State. They just say whatever they need to do to justify the result that they want. And that has been the case. And I think this year it is to another level because, as I was saying, I've been saying all year, there are no rules for bowl eligibility this year. If there was ever a year where the college football playoff was just going to say, screw it, let's put the 4 teams we want in and then any other team we want into the New Year's Six bowls because we just want to get these games in to get as much money and get as better ratings out of them that we can. This is the year they're going to do it. And it's exactly what they're doing, which is why I was saying if Clemson loses to Notre Dame again, as long as it's a close loss, they're still in the playoff. Look at that top 10. How many 2-loss teams do you see in it?
3.
They're at 5, 6, 7, 10, they're all 2-loss teams. If Clemson loses, I don't think it's falling past 4. Florida only dropped a spot for losing to freaking LSU.
Which is a joke. And I do. So you're right. It hasn't been much different. It's just been exposed more because we don't have out of conference play. We have Ohio State who's only played 5 games, and you see the blatant favoritism that comes in. Now, it's human nature. I am guilty of this. When I do a top 25 in the preseason, I am guilty. Once you get past 10, 15, you're kind of like, yeah, I'd really, you got returning quarterbacks. You have this many returning starters. You feel pretty good. And when you get to about, that team's always pretty solid. So you kind of tend to lean on the teams that you're more, or at least I am. You guys probably do more research than I do. I fall back to, that team's probably going to be pretty good because they've had solid recruiting classes. But I do think you've seen the massive disparity and the favoritism that goes on. And it's a vicious circular cycle that unfolds. And it is specific for the SEC, but clearly the committee likes the ACC too, as the ACC has the most teams ranked in the top 25. But let me give you an example, because I don't think you've got these resumes that come out. So I'm trying to figure out what the committee weighs this year. And for a while, I felt it was signature wins. They didn't care how many. For Ohio State, they beat Indiana, right? That was their signature win. So they didn't care how many games you played. They wanted to see the signature win. So for Texas A&M, what did we hear about them? Like their signature win?
It's Florida.
It was Florida, right? Well, what was Florida's signature win? It was Georgia, right? What was Georgia's signature win? It was Auburn. And then why was Auburn ranked in the top 25 so long? Oh, well, they had played, they'd lost to good teams. Like they're still there. They lost to good teams. And it's just this little vicious cycle that just keeps churning, and it all props each other up. When you've got a team like Cincinnati, who may be undefeated and may have beaten a lot of teams that are over 500 and that are pretty good, but just because they don't have certain logos on their helmets, the committee doesn't look at those. And they're like, I don't know if beating Army is a signature win this year, or beating Memphis or SMU. I don't know if those are, quote, signature wins. And they'll look at Tulsa the same way. Even though Tulsa's a top 25, they won't value it as much.
So I've got a theory. And it's that in years past, the committee's always been able to lean back, especially at this point in the rankings, on we'll let conference championship play it out. But right now, with the Pac-12 being out of it, with the Big 12 having 2-loss teams, we're looking at the log jam, the potential of 2 ACC and 2 SEC. It is a situation where they can't lay back and just say, well, we'll just let conference championship Saturday play it out, because you've got all these conferences that are out, and now they've got to make difficult decisions. It is a position, I'm not going to call it lazy, but I will call it easy, when you can just say, I don't know, we're going to have 5 Power 5 conference champs, right? Okay, well, we'll watch all the games together and pick the 4 best teams out of those 5 conference champs. And with that not being the case, it just kind of continues to bring to light the moving goalposts that we have for these rankings.
Yeah, and I think, here's the scenario I see playing out. Texas A&M fans have been yelling at me for weeks because I keep saying this, but I want Texas A&M fans to understand, I'm not arguing deserve. I'm not arguing merit. I'm not arguing logic. When you bring the argument that Texas A&M deserves to move into the 4 spot if Ohio State loses or they replace them, you're using logic based on where the rankings are. You're using logic based on how games go. Nothing the committee does is based on logic. I think that has become clear as you see every single week, the way that they move these teams around. So I'm telling Texas A&M fans right now, be prepared. If Ohio State loses to Northwestern,
it would be hilarious. It would be
hilarious. if Clemson gets blown out by Notre Dame and there's a spot that opens in the playoff. If Florida beats Alabama, your win over Florida will not mean a thing. Alabama is going to get that spot over you. So prepare yourselves mentally for it now. I could argue, and I don't think so, but I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State would get the spot over Texas A&M if it beats Oklahoma again. But I do think that the committee has a little more respect for the SEC than the Big 12 based on these rankings. So maybe the Aggies would get that spot. But I'm just saying, gird yourself for it, because there's a very real chance that the Florida team you beat earlier this year will be in the playoff and you won't.
Jerry Palm, I was just doing the HQ hit with him before we came on to tape the pod. He said he thinks Alabama has locked in the number one seed no matter what's happening. You agree with that, huh? No matter what happens in this game. Because clearly if they win.
2 is the floor.
2 is the floor, but I think you would have, I guess if Notre Dame wins, they'll be 1. If Notre Dame lost, then Alabama probably would stay number 1. So I guess he makes a pretty good point then, I guess.
I mean, yeah, I think they could fall to 2 if they lose badly, or if they lose and Notre Dame crushes Clemson, then they'd probably fall to 2. But yeah, I don't think they're falling anywhere below 2.
Okay. USC only moved from 15 to 13. It remains undefeated. No chance.
No chance.
No chance.
That's clear. The way they've been finagling these things, if USC had a chance, they'd have put it in the top 10.
The Big 12 champion has a better chance than Cincinnati.
Yeah, oh yeah. Cincinnati doesn't have a chance at all. Okay.
And
they made sure Cincinnati doesn't have a chance the last couple of weeks by continually dropping them. I think they might have been getting nervous with that 7 ranking, highest ranked, and they started really diving in. And then when they didn't have the opportunity, they were like, nope, let's go ahead and make sure this doesn't happen.
I mean, Cincinnati hasn't even played since November 21st. Can we even be sure they remember how to play football? I don't know. That's the way the committee's thinking.
I do think that Cincinnati would have a better case if it was 10-0. Like I just think that if they'd played the Tulsa game earlier in the season when they were supposed to and won, they'd played the Temple game and won, especially if they'd won handily. I just think that there's something startling about a 10-0 record that 8-0 just kind of blends in a little bit. Okay. Iowa State and Oklahoma. What is the path equal for both of them? Do you think that Oklahoma, because right now Iowa State at 6, Oklahoma at 10, is it the same, like win the Big 12 title game and get the same results? Or do you think Iowa State has a easier path with it being closer to number 4?
I think Iowa State has the quote unquote better chance, but I can't rule out Oklahoma. Like if Oklahoma blows out Iowa State, and we're talking about possibility where a 2-loss team gets in, and you're looking at a Florida or an Oklahoma or Texas A&M, just based on the brand. I mean, I know Texas A&M is SEC, but they are not considered nationally to be like a blue blood. I know that that's where they want to get, and that's what they hired Jimbo Fisher to bring them to. But I think as far as brand recognition and that kind of stuff, which the playoff obviously cares about, Oklahoma would have a chance. I think it would be a joke at this point if they got it, but that really doesn't matter, does it?
Let me ask you something. Who do you think's 2 losses are worse? Because Oklahoma was in both their games. The Kansas State loss is ugly, but it was only by 3. They could avenge their loss to Iowa State with a big win, right? That could kind of erase that one. And then they only have a 3-point loss. But meanwhile, you have Iowa State, who lost by 3 to Oklahoma State, but they lost to Louisiana, like a Sun Belt loss that wasn't close.
That's a top 20 team too.
I know. But I do feel like I still think if Oklahoma wins big, they would have a better chance than Iowa State if they won big. And it comes back to the whole perception of, who do we think is better? Who do we think has a better chance to actually be one of the top 4 teams? And I think that would favor Oklahoma. And you look at the addition of Ramondre Stevenson, Perkins, like they had guys that were out and now they're in. So that could be their big excuse, because the committee, as we've documented, can say anything they want to justify the team they have over another.
That's also what I've decided is how Clemson gets in with a loss. Clemson loses to Notre Dame and they're like, okay, so this one counts, but the first one doesn't count. Didn't have Trevor Lawrence, didn't have Tyler Davis, didn't have James Skalski, Mike Jones. We're not going to count that one in South Bend. In fact, quality loss because you took it to double overtime, right?
Yes.
Give them the bonus points. Somehow it just gets shrunk. I don't know. Any other?
That's what I've been saying. Yeah, no, I think back to your point about the worst 2 losses between them. I might be wrong here, and I'm sorry if I am, but if memory serves, Skylar Thompson did play in that Kansas State win over Oklahoma. So the committee could easily turn that into, well, Kansas State was a much better team when it had Skylar Thompson, and its record really kind of fell through the floor after they lost their starting quarterback. So that wasn't a terrible loss for the Sooners. Yeah, it's
Skylar Thompson had 334 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions in that game.
It's a different team then, It's a quality loss to Kansas State.
And I mean, it's not an inaccurate statement. It's just, it's not a good enough argument. But again, they don't need to convince a jury. They just need to tell you what they want to tell you.
What would you rather see? Would you want to see kind of chalk fly, or do you want to see chaos and see something that's really going to irritate me and a lot of college football fans?
I just think Northwestern winning would be hilarious. That would be like because the argument is really about Ohio State, and it's about the Big Ten, and it's about coming back to try and get a spot in the college football playoff and let Ohio State compete for a national championship. And this little spunky Northwestern team taking them down in Indianapolis, don't think it would happen, but I do think it would be hilarious. And that would lead to the controversy, right? Because then what do you do with that number 4 spot? Who is deserving of it? That becomes the great debate of Saturday night and Sunday morning.
And if Cincinnati did run Tulsa, but I would love to see Cincinnati have a big win against Tulsa and look the part, and then all of a sudden Ohio State gets beaten, they still snub them, which I think probably would happen.
It'll be Cincinnati versus Texas A&M in a bowl game somewhere.
Yeah.
I think I feel like I've been saying that it's going to be Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, no matter what, for the last month plus. So I think for my ego purposes, that's what I want the playoff to be. But I think as far as entertainment, just to watch the world burn a little bit, if Ohio State did lose this weekend, that's when things would get really interesting, because then that argument for the 4th team is going to be like, oh, the committee's going to be like, oh, crap, we got to actually pick one of these teams now.
Yeah. Because I think that Alabama is the best team. I think Notre Dame might be the most deserving. And I think Clemson deserves a crack at it. And I think that's where I cut off in terms of my national championship contenders.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever the 4th team is, good luck. You get to go to New Orleans. You don't get to go on Bourbon Street as much as you want to. And then you get to lose to Alabama by like 24 points. Woo! He is Tom Fornelli. He is Danny Kanell. You can follow him at Tom Fornelli, at Danny Kanell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Remember, 9 a.m., 6 p.m., full signing day coverage on CBS Sports HQ. Barton Simmons, Steve Wiltfong, Bud Elliott, Josh Pate, the rest of the 24/7 team. They're going to be giving you updates through the day. We're talking alerts to let you know when the biggest commitments and signings have happened. It's going to be a bonanza, wall-to-wall coverage. And after the end of it, well, then we're going to get Barton and we're going to give you an instant reaction show. It will be all the storylines we discussed on Monday. Plus, as Barton said on the show, we're going to follow the news because we do think there will be some surprises. So make sure that you watch on CBS Sports HQ and you catch the signing day reaction show here on the Cover 3 podcast. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.